Starting. Good evening and welcome to Homewood Nation Presents Tech Tuesday with Shimira Williams. I am your host, Elwin Green of Homewood Nation, and with me this week, as every week, is Ms. Williams. How you doing there, Ms. Williams?
I'm doing great. How are you doing this evening?
Oh, hanging on and hanging in. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
It is.
And Homewood is happening.
It is. It is. Even before we get started, even the Homewood Library is doing things for kids without starting this Saturday.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Library is a cool place to hang out.
It is.
It's my favorite place to hang out.
Mine's too. I actually went around introducing somebody to the library staff today.
Cool, cool, cool. Well, we are continuing our series on taking your business online. And on tonight's episode, we will talk about setting up a budget. So the first question that comes to mind simply is, why do we really need to create a budget for online? Some folks might feel like, well, I could just connect to some free services here and some free services there, and I can put it all together in half an hour, and I can have an online presence and have a website, and people will beat a path to my door, and all I need to do is buy a bag to put the money in. So, why do we need a budget?
For reality. Because there are a ton of free services out there that you can utilize that are great. However, to actually have a stable, sound online presence, it does take some investment. So you need to establish a budget so that you can have a clear definition of what you can afford, what you can get, what you can establish, and what you may need to find a free service for.
Okay. Okay, so it helps you in your decision making.
It does. You know, if you're looking for a specific service and you realize you might not have the budget for it, you may seek other alternatives to secure it.
Okay, okay, very good. So when we begin thinking then about a budget, what are some of the items that we need to have as line items in that budget? What do we need to include?
Well, you first need to include the cost of securing a domain name and web hosting service. You will also need to look at graphic artists, somebody to design your logo or any images that you may want on your website. That could be even photography. So, you know, if you are showcasing people, do you need somebody to come and photograph you guys? If you're showcasing clothing, if you're putting video on your website, do you need someone to come and edit that video in order for it to be able to get up on your site? You may also want to consider privacy settings that you want to add onto your website so that people don't know some of the confidential information when you register your domain. Another item that you also are going to need to look at is monitoring and maintaining your site. Things like who's doing your SEOs, who's maintaining those SEOs and services like that, who's monitoring the health of your site to make sure it's not blacklisted or things like that. Okay. So there are some free and some paid on both of those sides. Most people need to remember that there is the initial startup fee of establishing your online domain, you know, your online presence, which that's the first time you get everything up and running. And then there's the annual maintenance of maintaining your online presence.
So when we talk about these different costs and especially the startup fees for things, some of them will be totally dependent on who you contract for instance, graphic artists. If
Correct.
You contract with a graphic artist, then that will be totally a matter of how much that particular graphic artist charges, right? So they might charge, I don't know, as high as what's a good number for the high end?
The high end I've seen is $400.
Okay.
That's for, you know, you get your Twitter hitter ha ha ha, your Twitter hitter done, an image that's big enough to handle that, an image you can use as a profile size too, because you have to remember now that your website's going to have its own size images that it needs, and your social media has its own size images that it needs. Another one of those, where can I find alternative services? If you are in an area that has a plethora of universities, you might be able to find an intern that's into graphic arts and may want to do the work for you.
Okay.
Build a portfolio. And I'm thinking of, in Pittsburgh, we have the Art Institute. So that's somewhere you can go and tap.
And an intern, not to belittle them at all, but they may be available for a pizza.
Or stipend version, because they need to build their portfolio, or their school may have a requirement for them to do an internship. So that's when it's really cool, when the school is already mandating that they have to do an internship, and able to come in and say, I can offer you a space to do your internship.
Cool. So that's sort of a win-win for the student and for you. Someone can make use of that person's talents, assuming that it's a good match in other ways, of course. So looking at the overall picture, there are some things that can vary widely in their costs, and so they vary so widely that it's kind of hard to say up front what it could be or should be, right? But then there are some things that are kind of standard.
Your domain name is going to run you on average between $8 to $25. The $25 is the high end. That's for newer extensions like the .co's and the .lilies, or vanity URLs as they're often called, or shorties. So those are going to be on the higher ends of the $25. The average .com is $8 every year to renew. You know, I know that sometimes you can find those specials when they're 99 cents, but that's for new customers only. So the next year, anticipate that you will be spending at least $8. At the minimum, it's going to be $8. Web hosting service also runs, you know, they love to give specials to new clients. You might get $2.99 a month for your first year. The next year, you should plan on spending $6 to $8 per month for a basic account. And, you know, if the better the account and the more features it has on it, the more the costs are going to soar. Things like privacy settings, you know, to make sure that no one can access your information once you do register your domain, that's about $7 to $10 per year. So you pay it once, and that just makes sure that people can't see your name and servers that your site are sitting on when they go to search if the domain name is being utilized. GoDaddy has that feature on their site, and I actually just happened to be on there before we did this. So the information is in the chat, and they start at $7.99, and it can go up. The more information that you want private, the higher the cost is going to be. Your analytics service, Google Analytics is free for the basic account. However, if you would like some more of those additional features, the pricing is very variant, and I will tell you it starts on the higher end. Luna Matrix is actually globally known. They are one of the biggest Google Analytics resellers and providers in the nation. A class with them starts at $425 just to take their intro class.
Okay.
And their consulting service fees start at $500 typically. So to get into your analytics can be very expensive. However, the free analytics it does just fine. You need to know how to utilize it. and it's probably more robust than you actually need. So you would be okay with utilizing the free service. Google also has the webmaster tools that are also a free service that helps you monitor the health and maintenance of your website. So there are free things that you can use.
Okay, so your observations about, was it Lunametrics?
Yes.
And then you mentioned the Google Analytics, and that makes me think that maybe we should just devote a whole segment sometime to talking about Google tools that are available and that are that at least on a basic level are free, right? They have higher levels of things that you can pay for, but Google has a lot of tools, and one would even say toys that you can work with and play with for free.
And they do. They have a plethora. Matter of fact, Google for Entrepreneurs Week is actually coming up in Pittsburgh. It is October the 24th, and you can actually register for the event now, and it's on Eventbrite. If you give me a minute, I will probably post it in the chat because I am already registered.
Yay. Okay.
Of course, I'm registered. I really do enjoy going to the events every year. And if you can't attend the event, it's the hashtag is GFE Week, so you can always follow along and get good notes and information.
Okay, that's hashtag
GFE.
Google for Entrepreneurs.
Yep.
Okay, GFE Week.
And this is their third annual week, so during that week they actually talk about a lot of the tools and services that they offer for small business owners and entrepreneurs to get themselves online.
Okay, good deal. Well, we will give you a second to throw that up there into our little chat box.
Okay.
Meanwhile,
I am actually registered and I got it.
Okay, I'm not seeing anything yet.
Here we go.
Okay, there it is. To Eventbrite for the third annual Google for Entrepreneurs Week with Google Pittsburgh. Okay.
Space will be limited, so I definitely recommend you get to it fast.
All right, all right. Looking at these this kind of list of line items, the domain name itself, the hosting service, the extra fees if you want the security or the privacy, the additional privacy in your domain name registration, getting a graphic artist, having someone to actually test the website. I don't think we touched on that, but that's something that can be important as you're beginning your rollout. You don't want the site to be completely public until someone has done some testing for you, right?
Yes, 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 and yes. Make sure that someone tests your site. And when you're testing, they need to be testing in multiple environments, and that's why I said you might have a line item for that, because maybe you order pizza in for friends and family to come and test your site. Somebody needs to be testing in a mobile environment on your cell phone. Somebody needs to be testing on a tablet environment. That's more than one tablet. That's the iPad. That's on Samsung and Windows 8 also. And someone needs to test on an actual web browser for a desktop or laptop computer. You may get 3 different versions of one website.
Right, and different browsers, because Internet Explorer may render things differently than Chrome does, or Firefox.
Or Firefox, or Safari.
Right.
Don't forget that Safari doesn't support Flash
Right.
on tablets.
Right.
As a
Right.
matter of fact, most tablets won't support your Flash design websites. So you should consider that too. And that's the reason what made me start saying that people need to have a budget, because you see all these features on all these websites and people think, oh, I could have that feature too, when the cost to actually implement that feature may be beyond their scope, and it may be something that maybe not in year one I can afford to get, but in year 3 I may be in line to get something like that feature. Also, the technology is constantly changing. 2 years ago, you didn't care if your website was responsive.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's almost a mandate that your website must be responsive. It must be accessible through a telephone, through a tablet. It doesn't work anymore when it's on a tablet. People have moved on. It's kind of like if you are in my Google search results and I'm on my iPad and I go to look for your site and I get the broken link because it's all Flash because your site was done several years ago.
Right.
When I go back, I'm not wait till I get home to get on my computer to see your website. I'm just going to move to the next person in the search results.
Mm.
And we have to. There are people who don't have computers. Most people only access the phone through their through the internet through their cell phone.
Right. Right. So there's that whole piece of having the website put together in a way so that it is mobile friendly.
It is.
Yeah. Okay. And then once the site is up and running, you don't want it to be totally static, where it's absolutely the same thing every day for an entire year, right? So, so there needs to be some consideration about updating the content.
Yes. And even if you self-design, you might need a copy editor to just go over and proofread, whatever new content you're going to put out there. Or you may need somebody to do new pictures, or you may actually need to call your web designer back to update that page if you do not know how to. And you need to create a budget for that, because the web designer is going to automatically say there's a charge to making that change to your site. And I find that a lot of caterers and restaurants run into that issue. It's, I wanted to change the price on my menu.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And the menu is hard coded into their site, so the only way they can change it is if they call their web designer to change it.
Mm.
So you need to consider those things when you're designing or when you are creating a budget. How often does my menu change? How often does my pricing for my menu change? If I know that it's going to change, we have a summer menu and a winter menu, well, I need to plan for somebody to come and make changes for my summer schedule as well as my winter schedule.
So if your business is one where where you sell items where you have an inventory and your inventory is subject to change, maybe you sell a line of clothing, and there's your winter wardrobe and there's your summer wardrobe, and your website will need to change to reflect the seasons of the stuff that you're selling. So you need to be prepared to have someone make those changes, and you need to budget for that, right?
That is very correct, and I'm glad that you mentioned having an online store, because if you do have an online store, you need to budget for the additional security protocols that you need to have on your website in order to have a secure store. And we talked about those last week. The additional e-commerce in your web hosting, so your web hosting costs are going to go up. As well as you probably want to budget in your fees for processing online payments.
Right.
You can choose to put that in technology, or you can choose to put that in cost of goods sold, but you definitely need that line item in there.
Okay. Let's see. Is there something else that people should include in their line items for the budget? Um, how about if a website is one that's heavy in its use of media? Um, if they make use of music or video, um, sometimes you might have to pay for some of that.
You may definitely consider copyright infringements before using other people's music or video. That is the last thing you want is a lawsuit under your technology budget because you've been slapped with copyright infringements. So you may be paying an artist to use their music or video or image, because it can go all the way down to an image. There are people who like to post celebrities, and they have to be very mindful of not being sued and copyright infringement and things like that. So if you are into a gossip site, consider those things. Consider the copyright costs that you may be paying for photos. You might not be hiring a graphic artist. You might literally be buying pieces of content as media for your website. I will say that one item that I believe that every person should spend on their website is hard drive, an external hard drive to back up their sites.
Yes.
Or a clouding service to back up their site, but some method to back up their site beyond just their computer. It's great to, productivity one's a WordPress site. We often use, I'll back up or I'll, export it, but I also put it on a flash drive and then store that flash drive somewhere else. So it's not the end-all, be-all if things happen. What if there's a fire at your location or water damage? You need to be on that site, that just local backup. So I always recommend that people purchase an additional external hard drive if possible.
Yes. Yeah. Back up, back up, back up. We may wind up making that a mantra, okay, on Tech Tuesdays because it's applicable in every situation, really. Anytime you're doing anything on a computer, you need to have a backup of anything that you care about.
So my mantra is I need a backup plan for my backup plan to back up my backup plan, which I got off of a song, but it totally fit my life.
Right.
Big Outcast, or Big Boy from Outcast, that is my mantra on backing up. I back up monthly, I back up quarterly, I do a big backup annually in December, and I know people who actually have safety deposit boxes just to store their hard drives for true in case of an emergency.
Right. And there are online services, cloud services, where you can back up your work over the internet. I won't comment on any of them except to say that they're out there. You can use them. There's Dropbox, there's Google Drive, there's
OneDrive, Box.net. I got a new one in my mailbox yesterday. What is it? Just Cloud. So there's a plethora of them. I still go old school with I like a physical backup of my backups.
right.
I have enough stuff on the cloud. That's cool, but I still want a backup of my backup.
Okay. Okay. Hey, you can never be too safe when it comes to your data.
You know what a major issue is, though? Even if your site, maybe you move it to another platform, sometimes all your media won't move correctly. So if you have a backup, you actually have a backup of all the pictures and media that you had linked to a post or a site page, which is a lot better than having to go find the new media or find out that your post from 2.5 years ago picture didn't come over and you didn't know because you didn't go back to read the 2.5-year-old post to know.
Right, right. But someone who might have Googled something that's related to that, they will come to your website specifically looking for that thing and get what the old 404 message
Yeah.
not found. So, um, so yeah, all of that is just to say back up, back up, back up. So looking at the overall uh, picture of preparing yourself financially to establish an online presence, can we give folks a ballpark of how much they should be prepared to spend overall to get started well?
To get started well, when I say well, that means you have a domain name secured for a year, a web hosting service secured for a year, and a simple, I call them business card splash page. They are a landing page that simply has basic contact information about your company. There is no sliding images or anything like that. There may be one stock image and your social plugins, but it does give you an online presence. And I would say you should look at that at least $500 to have that whole package put together for you.
Okay.
I've seen as low as $300 for special, but on average it's typically about $500 to get something that basic and simple started.
And that's to kind of carry you through the first year.
First year, first 18 months, you need to. One thing I will say about website design, people always assume that the web developer is going to write their content, and they are awesomely surprised when the web developer says to them, no, you bring me the written content that you want. And there are web developers and web companies that do that, but there will be an additional charge if they are going to write your content. So
that it surprises me that people would even think that, but perhaps the reason that surprises me is because I am a writer myself. So I would not dream of just asking somebody else or a web designer or developer to write my content for me. No, you're a developer. You do that coding magic, I'm the writer.
that coding magic. So that's true. And you know what I like to tell people even about, they say, well, my web designer can secure my domain name and web hosting. And I always use this analogy. You don't call an accountant and tell them to go set up a bank account for you and manage your money.
Yeah, right.
If you don't want to do that, your domain name and web hosting account is the most important part of your online presence, because once it's established, it is set to stay forever. It's your hub for your online presence. Everything should feed back to your website. It's like your more is your address for your business online.
There you go. There you go. Okay, well, I think we've pretty well covered that particular topic for this evening, as far as line items that should be included in the budget for establishing an online presence. And we're talking specifically like for the first year. You should have all of these things under consideration and fish around a bit, do some searching. If you can find free resources that will do what you need done, then fine. But otherwise, be prepared to pay what qualified providers, are charging for those services. And I'm saying qualified providers because, it's too easy to wind up paying money to. There's a word that people use where I come from. Down in Louisville, Kentucky, they talk about jacklegs, like a jackleg preacher. which is somebody who doesn't really know the Bible that well, but they just kind of preach. But you can always find a jackleg person who will do something in a way that you would really disappoint you, put it that way, over time. So, um, so be prepared when needed to uh, pay the best that you can afford for what to pay for the best quality that you can afford. Put it that way.
And think of it this way, it's something that you can build on. You don't have to have every bell and whistle today.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe year one through first 18 months, you might just be establishing your presence. And then the next year, you know that, hey, I can add a few more pages with another couple bells and whistles because my budget has expanded. So
Right.
I say this to people once again because it's not something that you go from 0 to 100 in. I don't have a web presence today and now I got a $50,000 web presence tomorrow. It's something that you can build on. It's important to have one. So if you have to start small and build on it, start small and build on it. But set a budget for it. It's an investment in your company.
So having said that, we are going to prepare to sign off, and I am going to start working on my budget for the new and improved Homewood Nation, which will still be found at the address www.homewoodnation.com. Ms. Williams, I just realized that in all of these times together, you've mentioned Productivity LLC, which is your company, but I don't think we've ever given your address so that folks can check you out.
I'm at productivityllc.com.
Okay, there you go. So you can get a lot more of Ms. Williams' expertise there. And we thank you for viewing. Join us next week when we return to the series Taking Your Business Online. And if you look down below in our little description down there, you'll see what we have scheduled as our topic next week. So thanks for joining us tonight. We'll see you next week. Good night.
Good night.